Shalom, family. Welcome back to the channel. This is Judah. Israel, a feared nation that cannot be removed. Why is the nation of Israel living in so much fear? With all that the Most High demonstrated right in the midst of their eyes, they cannot shake their fear. With that kind of power backing you as a nation, why is it that you haven't realized there is no room for fear in your spirit? You are a blessed nation, a powerful nation, one that other nations fear, and you cannot be removed. So what do our oppressors fear the most? Why are they determined to rid the world of the black Israelite man? I put a couple of inserts here, one from CNN and a couple from YouTube News. So I'll read them. Millions of Americans shrugged off their fear of the coronavirus one holiday weekend when they flocked to crowded beaches, lakes, and restaurants. But there's another type of contagion that still keeps some or most of white America paralyzed, and that's the fear of black men in public places. This Memorial Day weekend saw the release of two disturbing videos involving black men. One showed a white Minneapolis police officer with his knee on the neck of a black man who was gasping, "I can't breathe." That man later died. That was George Floyd. In the second incident, a white woman was walking her dog in New York Central Park when she got into a dispute with a black man who asked her to leash her pet. A video shot by the man shows her vowing to call the police and saying, "I'm going to tell them there's an African American man threatening my life." Both episodes came not long after the release of another video that showed Ahmaud Arbery, an unarmed 25-year-old black man, shot to death after encountering two white armed men while jogging in Georgia. These types of incidents are not new to our nation of men and women. Black man, woman, house, life. They snuff them out as if though they mean nothing. Why do you think that is? Believe it or not, it's done out of fear. They fear the nation of Israel. I'm not talking about the camps, the IUICs, the GOCCs, and all those other camps. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about Israel as a nation. Whether you're in a camp or not, the fact that you are an Israelite man, they hate your guts and they fear you. Where does this fear come from? This is not a new fear. This fear goes all the way back to the very beginning. And as we go through this presentation, I'm going to show you some key points demonstrating why they fear us so much. Even though we are on the bottom, we have no military force, we have no kings, we have no power physically in these nations. Yet, they still fear you as if though you were the most powerful thing on earth. And guess what? That's because you are. You see, they know more needs. It is then that you will increase. When you understand where your source of power comes from,
All praises to
and
the
who
Most
holds the
High.
key to your salvation, and you come back to the obedience of serving your Creator, their power will be instantly broken. They know this. They know this. And there is no limit to where they'll go, how far they'll go, to keep you unaware of the source of your power. This is why there are so many fake and false books out there to keep you confused, to keep you misled, to keep you unaware, and to hide who you truly are from yourself. As long as they can do that, they remain in power. So today I hope that we can begin to break these chains of horror and fear and stand on our feet rather than live on our knees. The fear of the Israel man, 2 Chronicles, chapter 20, verse 29. And there was a terror of the Most High upon all the kingdoms of the land when they heard that the Most High fought against the enemies of Israel. See, they knew that we had a creator, a father, or as they call him, a God, that would protect us. So it didn't matter the strength of their army or the power of their people. It was never enough to overcome Israel because of Israel's source of power, the greatest power of all. They was aware of that power. They was also aware of the fact that if they kept you blinded from your source of power, they will be able to control and rule over you. So today we will break those chains. Deuteronomy chapter 2 verse 25. This day will I begin to put the dread of thee and the fear of thee upon the nations that are under the whole heaven, who shall hear report of thee and shall tremble and be in anguish because of thee. Do y'all really understand what that means? Listen to what the Most High said. He said he will begin to put the dread of us and the fear of us upon all the nations under the entire heaven.
All
That's a
praises
lot
to
of
the
power.
Most High.
And yet today we demonstrate none of it. We walk in fear. We sleep in fear. We hide. We run. We get shot down in the streets. Our kids are shot down in the streets because we don't recognize our source of power. Exodus chapter 1 verse 8 through 22. Then a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came to power in Egypt. Look, he said to his people, the Israelites have become far too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or they will become even more numerous, and if war breaks out, they will join our enemies and fight against us and leave the country. They were worried about your free labor, their free labor. You know, the labor that we provided with no pay. So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor. They built Pithom and Ramses as store cities for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites, hated, despised the Israelites, and they worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter with harsh labor in brick and mortar, and with all kinds of work in the fields. And all their harsh labor, the Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, "When you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby is a boy, kill it. But if it's a girl, let her live." The midwives, however, feared the Most High and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. Then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, "Why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live?" The midwives answered Pharaoh, "Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They're vigorous, and they give birth before the midwives can arrive." So the Most High was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared the Most High, he gave them families of their own. Then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people: "Every Hebrew boy that is born, you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live." So the Egyptians feared the men of Israel and wanted to eliminate any possible chance of having to deal with a powerful nation of Israelite men of great numbers in case of any future confrontation. Did you know that they even forced Israel to add their babies into the mortar mixture used to make bricks for the buildings? This is how much they feared Israel. It's funny how they accepted our women but despised our men. Just like today, they mingle with our women, bringing a new species of beings to life. This is also done by the Israelite men. They seek out husbands and wives from other nations, which contaminates the bloodline. So they were afraid of Israel's great numbers and of losing the free labor. Let's look at the promise made to Abraham. Genesis 15 and verse 5. He took him outside and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars. If indeed you can count them." Then he said to him, "So shall your offspring be, the nation of Israel." Genesis chapter 15 and verse 18. On that day, the Most High made a covenant with Abraham and said, "To your descendants I give this land, from the Wadi," that's the river of Egypt, "to the great river, the Euphrates," that's through Turkey. Was it just the fear alone that Israel was growing in numbers? Or was there something more sinister going on? The enemy wanted to stop the seed of promise to Abraham. But the Most High said Israel will not be removed. Here's the proof. Jeremiah chapter 31 verses 34 through 37. No longer will they have to teach one another to obey me. I, the Most High, promise that all of them will obey me, ordinary people and rulers alike. I will forgive their sins and forget the evil things they have done. I am the Most High, all-powerful. I command the sun to give light each day, the moon and stars to shine at night, and ocean waves to roar. I will never forget to give those commands, and I will never let Israel stop being a nation. How much more proof do we need? That doesn't mean that you can transgress his laws ignore his laws, and live your life the way you choose, ignoring his commandments, his laws, and statutes, you will surely be removed. But all of Israel who keeps these commandments, who keeps these laws and statutes to their heart, they will not be removed. I, the Most High, have spoken. Now, can you measure the heavens? Can you explore the depths of the earth? That's how hard it would be for me to reject Israel forever. Even though they have sinned, I, the Most High, have spoken. Trying to get rid of the black man was not a new thing. They took advantage of the black man in both world wars in an attempt to use the black man on the front lines of the battlefield that should not have had anything to do with these slaves. In other words, they put our men up front in order to spare the white soldiers. Look at this. Israelites forced to fight in World War I, and this was also in World War II. With World War I raging in Europe, Israelite soldiers were forced to fight for their colonial masters between 1914 and 1918. France recruited more Israelites than any other colonial power, sending 450,000 troops from West and North Africa to fight against the Germans on the front lines. Israel cannot be removed. So what about today? Why does Israel still suffer from fear? And that's a good question, because through the ministry that I've been dealing with for the last 8 or 9 years, fortunate enough to communicate with lots of people. Some follow the channel, some don't. But either way, at one point in time, I was communicating with different people. And one thing I noticed in common with all of them is at the end of the day or the end of the conversation, I detected fear. And it would usually come in the way of a question. When a lot of times when you ask questions, you are also making a statement about your faith, your belief, and your fears, your strength, and so forth. And I've always been pretty good about detecting, and not always able to explain it, but I've always been good about detecting things that some people think they're keeping hid. But the question, why does Israel still suffer from fear today? Let's go into Ezekiel chapter 30 and verse 3. Ezekiel chapter 30 verse 3 points to a time of doom for nations in connection with the day of the Most High. Daniel's series of visions deal with Gentile world powers and their role in the Most High's plan for the earth. Nebuchadnezzar's image of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay in Daniel chapter 2 verse 31 to 45 represents successive Gentile kingdoms that will dominate until Christ returns and establishes his reign. Now let me just stop here for a minute, because 90% of all people, and mostly our people, when we see that word Christ, we get discombobulated. We get unhinged and confused. So let me clear this confusion up while we're here. The word Christ does not represent a particular or single person. It is a definition of a chosen obligation or job to do. The word Christ means anointed. To be anointed means to be given a special privilege or a special assignment or a special duty.
All praises to the Most High.
So, the kingdoms that will dominate until Christ returns and establishes his reign. So in this case, when we see the title Christ, no matter what books you read, how they define this word Christ, it's really talking about David. And we're gonna talk about that too. In fact, this presentation today is going to talk about Israel's fear, the nation's fear, and why either or both live in fear. So who is this Christ? We'll deal with this question in just a moment. Daniel's vision of the four beasts, Daniel chapter 7, verse 1 through 27, likewise speaks of four kings or nations, which will dominate for a time until Christ comes to rule forever. Like I said, we're going to show what this is talking about in just a little bit. It is not talking about JC. The visions of the ram and the goat, Daniel chapter 8, verse 1 through 26, gives more detail about these Gentile rulers and the time involved in their dominion. In each of these passages, the Gentiles have dominion over the world, including the Jewish people, that would be us, for a time, but the Most High will ultimately subdue them, ultimately subdue them all and establish his own kingdom once and for all. Each prophecy culminates with a reference to Christ, David. I want to keep emphasizing that in order to help break the beliefs that we've been raised up to believe that when you see Christ, it's talking about JC. Well, the fact of the matter is, when you see the word Christ, it refers to David, King David. The Christians have twisted this around and gave JC the label of Christ, which is completely false. Each prophecy culminates with a reference to Christ's kingdom, and that's true. So the times of these Gentile rulers would be all the years between the Babylonian Empire of Nebuchadnezzar and the glorious return of Christ to establish his kingdom. We are now living in the times of the Gentiles, that is, in the era of Gentile domination. Now comes the Christ. I want y'all to pay close attention because this will help you understand who the real Christ is. Listen to what the Most High said. I will raise up for David a righteous branch. He's going to raise up a people. A people. Now, when we talk about raising up a righteous branch, this branch comes out of the nation of Israel. He's not going to substitute us with another nation that he vowed to destroy. This righteous branch that he's raising up for David is coming out of the nation of Israel. In 1051 BC, Saul was made the first king of Israel. About 40 years later, David, the youngest son of Jesse, 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 11, began to rule. David was a man after the Most High's own heart, 1 Samuel chapter 13 and verse 14, and stands to this day as the embodiment of a great king, even though he was a sinner. To him, the Most High made a promise in 2 Samuel chapter 7 that one of his own offspring, y'all, now I don't want y'all to misplace this statement. I need you to focus on what I'm saying. To him, the Most High, he's talking to Samuel, he's prophesying about David. To him, the Most High made a promise to Samuel that one of his own offspring would sit upon the throne, and that the throne of his kingdom would be established forever. That was the throne of David, the throne of King David. And that throne is established throughout eternity. That's what it's saying here. Verse 16 says, your house and your kingdom shall be made sure forever. You hear that? Your house and your kingdom shall be made sure forever before me. Your throne shall be established forever. But it came very clear after David's death that this promise was in jeopardy. The ministry of the prophets The demise of the United Kingdom with the death of Solomon, David's son, and the idolatry and disobedience of the divided kingdom threatened to bring down the Most High's wrath on Israel in the north and Judah in the south. Samuel has said to the people very clearly at the inauguration of the first king, "If you still do wickedly, you shall be swept away, but you and your king." 1 Samuel 12 and 25. So for centuries, the people lived with this tension. On the one hand, they had a promise that David's kingdom would be made sure forever. And on the other hand, they had a threat that if they persisted in disobedience to the Most High, they and their king would be swept away. The men who kept this tension before the eyes of the people for the next 4 centuries were the prophets of Israel. And in their message is also found its ultimate resolution. The ministry of the prophets through the years of the divided kingdom is a constant reminder to Israel constantly call the people back to the Most High, to love the Most High and to obey His commandments as incentives to obedience. The prophets warn that judgment comes upon the faithless and promise that salvation comes to the faithful. Now, I just want to stop right here for a second and focus on this statement. The prophets warn that judgment comes upon the faithless and promised that salvation comes to the faithful. I don't have to elaborate on that to help you understand what that means. We know the difference between faithless and faithful. This is a big problem with our people today. They have very little faith. And it amazes me when I talk to people of our nation and I bring up scripture and I get responses like, "I don't believe in no God. What kind of God would let this happen? How can you claim that the God loves you when He lets your family members die?" All these kind of crazy thoughts. That's a faithless person. You were not born to, you were born to live forever. But when Adam fell, then death creeped in. So you can't blame the Most High. He's done His part. It's us who haven't done our part. These 3 things made up the prophetic message: commands to forsake evil and follow the Most High in righteousness, warnings of coming judgment, and promises of hope. We should never forget that everything the prophets predicted about the future was always intended to produce obedience in the present. It's true in 1 Samuel chapter 12, verse 7 to 25, or chapter 12, verse 7 and verse 25, that Samuel pleaded the past for the sake of the present. It is just as true that the prophets pleaded the future for the sake of the present. If the study of prophecy does not produce sanctification, then it has been studied wrong. If gazing into the future hinders our responsiveness to present needs, we may be sure that we are not gazing with the eyes of the Creator. Here's Jeremiah's message to Judah and the house of David. I want to unfold for you from Jeremiah chapter 21 and verse 11 to chapter 23 and verse 8. A typical example of how the prophets preached, how they confronted the wickedness of their own day, how they warned of judgment, and how they held out hope. What we will find is that the resolution of the tension between the threat of annihilation for disobedience on the one hand and the promise of a sure and lasting kingdom on the other hand is found in the distant hope that a righteous branch, again, The righteous branch is coming up out of the nation of Israel. Those are the ones who will obey and be obedient to the law, statutes, and commandments, will shoot up out of the stump of David, gather his people, and make them new forever. Jeremiah chapter 24, verse 7. Jeremiah chapter 31 and verse 33. Now Jeremiah was born in Anathoth, northeast of Jerusalem, about 627 BC. He was called by the Most High as a boy to be a prophet to the southern kingdom of Judah during its final years. He proclaimed the word of the Most High under the last 5 kings of Judah: Josiah, Jehoahaz, Shallum, Jehoiakim, Coniah, and Zedekiah. Josiah, you recall, was a good king who tried to reform the nation after finding the old book of the covenant in the temple, 2 Kings, verse chapter 22 and verse 23. But the rest of the kings were not good. Jeremiah 21 and verse 11 and Jeremiah 22 and verse 30 is a collection of oracles which Jeremiah spoke from the Most High against these kings. I want you to look at this whole unit because it all leads up to the prophecy of the coming king in Jeremiah 23 verses 1 through 8. First, in Jeremiah 21, 11 and Jeremiah 22 and 9, the prophet speaks in general to the king of Judah, the house of David. Chapter 21 verse 11, chapter 12 verse 22, chapter 22 verse 1. What he does is describe what the Most High looks for in a faithful king and commands it. In Jeremiah 21 and 12, he says, execute justice in the morning and deliver from the hand of the oppressor him who has been robbed. And he couples this command with a warning, lest my wrath go forth like fire and burn with none to quench it, because of you.
All praises to the Most High.
You know, there's one thing I would like to add to what the elder was speaking about. Is that as far as when you get all of these slavery movies and you hear about these things about us being shot down in the media and us trying to rise above and it's the first black president, the first black this, first black that. Well, these are all methods and tactics to keep us under, to keep us down. They want us to feel inferior in every way. They don't want us to rise up. They want our focus to be on racism, so our focus won't be on the Most High and these laws and these statutes and these commandments. Stop falling for these tricks. They're just trying to steal our energy. The only thing that we should be focused on is the laws. Coming back to the Most High, coming back to our identity, and coming back to our heritage. It's a major distraction, and we can't fall for it anymore. Until next time, shalom. Most love to you, family, and especially the elder that spoke